Welcome back to Worldhoppers, the collaborative YouTube channel where we chat about all things speculative. I think they've probably talked about things that are not. I don't know. We
Normally
talk
it's
about
books, but today it's not.
also TV because you guys did a Wheel of Time stream, right?
I think so.
It's like book
Oh, wow,
adjacent.
yeah.
It's been a while.
So, yeah, we're here to talk about Rings of Power. All three of us we're the biggest fans among the World Hopper community, so that's why we were chosen to discuss this amazing contribution to the Tolkien cinematic universe.
As you can tell by my name,
Yes.
it is great.
Stunning.
I mean,
love it
we were the three number one fans, but it goes Alex, then
Alex,
Klaus,
Alex.
then me. So yeah, I feel like with book stuff, I'm usually like, okay, well, let's talk, how did you come to this author? Let's talk non-spoiler. Then I don't really, what do we want to do? Like episode by episode? I don't know. What do you guys want to talk about?
I mean, we could talk about how it was, I guess, first marketed, which should have been an alarm bell, so I'm the kind of person that when going into a show, especially these fantasy adaptations, I try to ignore most of the, pre-airing of the show hype and or hate, because normally it's garbage. Everybody that hates it for very dumb reasons. And then people hyping it up, I'm like, okay, so you got flown out to a premiere. You said you loved it. Like, I don't care about your opinion. And then the show happened. And
because I mean, like you said, like for a lot of things,
alarm
like
bells.
There's things that like I'll see trailers for something, I'll be like, this is guaranteed my favorite thing ever, and then things that I see trailers and I'm like, that looks really dumb, and it's because a friend convinces me that I should watch it, that I'll actually see it. And oftentimes the thing I thought I would love, I hate, and the thing that I thought looked dumb ends up being my favorite thing. So like, yeah, trailers isn't really reliable. Like I didn't go into it being like, this is guaranteed to be bad. I had a bad feeling, but I was like,
yeah,
it could be great. I would love to be surprised. I would love to watch this and be like, oh, actually, this is pretty good. And that did not happen. What was your exposure to marketing, Klaus?
So,
oh yeah, I'm curious if did they market it?
Marketing back
here? Did they market it differently in? I guess you wouldn't know how they market it here, but you're in Germany.
I know because I talked to people in America, and no, we got our own trailer because it was in German, but we had that super fans thing too, just with German super fans, and it was basically the same thing.
Why do I feel like watching Rings of Power in German would be a ton of fun?
It's even better in German. I think I watched the first 2 episodes in German, and then I thought, like, okay, the dialogue, that can't be. I mean, that's got to be the translation, right?
Was it better in German?
Apparently it wasn't, because then I rewatched it. So I watched episodes 1 and 2, I think, twice, which tells you all about my level of commitment for this show.
For real.
And it was just stunning to see that. No, my expectations were not existent. Like, so I didn't regard this as an adaptation, and I thought that maybe
because it's not. I think maybe we should say it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how you feel about the show. What it is not is an adaptation.
Yes, that's very much not what it is. So
which that doesn't preclude it from being good. I mean, it is.
It could have been just a good fantasy show, kind of set in Middle Earth. But I mean, it's whether you like it or dislike it, like it's very much fanfic. And I'm sure there's things in the Silmarillion or appendices that you can be like, oh, well, see, they did that thing. But like most of it's kind of made up. It's not really adapting any particular part.
But like what you just said, Alex, is like my biggest point. Oh, I shouldn't say my biggest point of confusion because I have many points of confusion. But one of my biggest points of confusion is just like in terms of, business CEO strategy, marketing team, like when you're putting together this show and you're like, okay, who's our target demographic? Who are we writing this for? And they're like, so we're going to insert Easter eggs that only the true Tolkien fan will notice or recognize. But also we're going to write a story that any Tolkien fan would immediately hate because it has nothing to do with what Tolkien wrote. So like, who is this for? Like, who is your audience when you're doing that? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
People that
So
like
you are
really expensive shows.
assuming there's a strategy for this? Because I don't see a strategy. I don't see a strategy.
Well,
at
that's what
all.
happened, is like they wrote a show that like the plot has like very little to do with anything Tolkien wrote, and in fact often contradicts what Tolkien wrote, but then has a bunch of stuff in it that you'd only get if you know a bunch about Tolkien. So like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
I mean, that was kind of one of the biggest red flags initially, though, before the show ever aired, was just like the showrunner straight up saying that they're going to write the thing that Tolkien never wrote. So already you're just like, so you are literally just making up a story in his world with the material you have available.
I mean, I like the accuracy of it.
Oh, true. But it's weird. What's weird to me is that, like, because I still don't know, did the Tolkien estate refuse to give them the rights to more, or did they not try to get other rights?
I think they refused to sell the rights to the Silmarillion.
Okay. Because I feel like they should have just waited then. Because they spent an awful lot of money for not a lot of material. So you basically.
Or they could have adapted the material that they did buy. That's a great idea, I think.
I mean, I guess.
Crazy idea. But like what you just said, that was at least in the US trailers, was the story that Tolkien never wrote, which what I love about that is that every single trailer for every movie could say that, except for Peter Jackson's movies. But like Fast and the Furious, the story that Tolkien never wrote. I mean, that is equally accurate.
So that's not by Tolkien?
Not as far as I know. I think it might be lightly influenced, inspired. So did we all basically end up hate watching it by the end? Is that?
I mean, so by the end, I had below zero expectations, and I was basically rolling my eyes at most scenes that were happening. But when I first started it, so this was when I was immediately disappointed. I watched the first 2 episodes the night that it aired, and I was just bored. It wasn't like when I started watching Wheel of Time and I was like, what are you doing? Why are you making these choices? I started watching this and I was just like, okay, it's introduction. There's another introduction, another introduction, another introduction. And we got like 45 minutes of the first episode and I was almost asleep. And then it happened again in the second episode. And I was just like, why is this so boring?
Well, it's funny that you say that you were almost asleep, because I watched it with my brother and he fell asleep during the first episode. And then we just like went to bed and we're going to like watch it the next morning.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I was like, do you want me to play back where you fell asleep in the first episode? He was like, they're going to show a recap. So I don't think I need that. And they showed a recap. He was like, oh yeah, I missed nothing. So we can just proceed.
Yeah, so I mean, my immediate reaction to the show was just like, I'm very bored. I'm not attached to anything. I don't care about any of these people or these characters or these locations. And already, like, everybody was praising the budget. Like, sure, there were some beautiful shots, but there were also very, very noticeably bad looking scenes that looked a lot like the Hobbit trilogy scenes, where you can just clearly see that it's like a guy in a like cheap costume and everything behind him is fake. And that really caught me off guard out, because I was like, it's so expensive. But like when you go to like anything with the dwarves, most of that looks pretty great. If you have,
but I think it's also easier to pull off rock walls than.
But like if you have like sweeping shots of like an elven city or the ocean, like all that shit looks great. And then you zoom in and you see a bunch of elves standing in what looks like cardboard uniforms, very clearly on a fake boat with like green screen effects everywhere. And I was like, that just doesn't look good.
I think we might comment on, but we wouldn't really complain that much about if it had been a really good story that we were like, okay, so some of it looked a bit cheap. Because like, for the most part, what I've seen, the reception of The Witcher is that it's a mixed bag. It's a pretty decent show. It has some flaws. It often looks quite cheap, but people aren't like, this looks ridiculous. They're just like, it was not ideal, that scene.
I think it's because The Witcher's more like, The Witcher's fun. Like I have zero attachment to those books, but everybody likes Henry Cavill and the show is pretty fun most of the time. And I remember watching Wheel of Time and thinking that looked really cheap and bad. And then when I watched Witcher season 2, I was like, this looks way noticeably higher budget than that show or season 1 of The Witcher.
Mhm.
And then this show is way higher budget than anything that we've seen, and it doesn't look great most of the time, and that's kind of like
And
weird to
when like
me.
the only thing that has going for it is how expensive it is, then you're like, again, if it was like a great story, you'd be like, I
Mhm.
forgive that doesn't look that great because like it's a great story and the cast is great and we're into this experience even if it looks silly sometimes. But here, like the only thing that we can all agree on is like, okay, it cost $1 billion, so it'll be $1 billion worth of prettiness. And then when even that isn't quite it, you're like,
Yeah. It's bad when most reviews that you would see would the very first thing they're like, let me get this out of the way first. It looks great. Like,
and even then you're like,
but-
does it look that great? How did it look to you, Klaus?
Splendid, really. No, just like Alex, I was feeling basically bored over the course of the first, I think, 2 episodes. I think episode 3 is when I get to Numenor, and then I started thinking like, okay, this is getting stupid, like really stupid, but it still looks fine. It's still not terrible. So, I mean, in episode 1, she is swimming across the whole Sundering Sea in the end, which is stupid, but there are not a lot of really stupid things in episode 1. But then it gets more and more stupid. But I didn't really feel anything about it because I had thought beforehand, okay, whatever. I'm watching it, but I don't have any heart involved in this. And then came episode, I think, 6 and 7. So the battle and the episode after that, and that is where it got tense for me. And then I watched the final episode and I freaked out completely. So that was when it got bad for me, like really bad, and I was offended.
I was gonna say by the last
Really
episode, I kept
angry.
saying like by this point I'm expecting it to not be very good,
yeah.
to in fact be quite bad. And then I watched the last episode and I was like, how is it worse than I expected?
Yeah.
Like,
So it was
how?
basically like Wheel of Time. The final episode was the worst episode, and while it looked good, everything else was just like, I mean, I'm going to be the first one to compare it to House of the Dragon because we have to do that at some point. And if you
Is
just
someone
look
gonna
at
ring a
any
bell or
scene-
take a shot?
Yeah, just look at any scene in House of the Dragon. Look at the performance.
Mhm.
Look at
But also House of the Dragon is, I think, I don't have the numbers on this. I'm not Hillary, but I think they shoot a lot more on location and it's not so much green screen. And that makes a
that's-
huge difference.
But again, so that goes back to like my initial point, which is why, like, granted, it was shot and filmed at a different time, but like, go watch Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy and then watch the Hobbit trilogy. Like, which one
Yeah.
looks better? One is very much more expensive in being the Hobbit trilogy, but if you put them up next to each other or up next to this show, there was like a grit and a realism because there was so much on location shots. There was so much.
But that's crazy to me, though,
like,
is that
costuming and stuff. And
Rings of
like, the
Power was
orcs were real.
shot. Rings of Power was shot in New Zealand. So I'm like, I don't
How-
understand.
Can you tell? 95% of the scenes are on green screen. Like,
Which is that's what's so crazy to me. Like
where's
you
the
can't even
location?
say. Like if it
That's-
was the case where they couldn't shoot in New Zealand, you're like, well, they're doing the best they can by filling it in with green screen because they couldn't shoot in New Zealand. Then
Yeah.
I'd be like, okay, I guess. But they were shooting in New Zealand.
But
there
like,
was bad weather in New Zealand for like half a year, so they couldn't shoot, I guess, in nature.
I mean, every scene with Galadriel on a horse was shot outside somewhere. I mean, first of all, what's with all the slow-mo? Like, I
You're
kept
afraid
making the
you'd
joke
miss it.
that Zack Snyder directed this because there is so much slow-mo, and for like the dumbest reasons. Like every scene, Galadriel's
By
on a
which you
horse.
mean no reasons.
Well, like, okay, Galadriel's on a horse. Like, why do we need that in slow-mo? Like,
Why
the-
do we
the
need that
entire-
shot at all?
You don't at all. Or her like flipping upside down and like hanging off the horse. I was like, is that even like physically possible? Like, why would
Well, she did it, so
the entire thing was like built for comedy? Like, I understand like most of your reviews are just like how hilarious the show is, and I feel like it's unintentionally hilarious often because I don't know, like someone shooting that and like she does this weird flip. She's like one arm hanging off the horse and then like cuts an orc in half. It's the dumbest thing ever. Meanwhile, there's two soldiers that are just like, who's that? That's Galadriel. I'm like, this is literally like a parody. Like, this is filmed for comedy. But like, am I supposed to be taking this seriously? Like, oh my god, she's such a crazy like military strategist and soldier.
It's also the constant literally constant misunderstanding of why you have a scene. So like showing a scene, right, where they're riding across country. Like this is a scene that by itself, you're like, that's a valid scene to have, especially in a fantasy epic. But all of us, every time they did it, we're like, why are you showing this scene right now? Because the reason, like in Lord of the Rings, you show that scene is to convey how expansive this world is, to show how much ground they're having to cover, to really get a sense of like how much they are traveling.
Building up their army to charge to Minas Tirith, like that was all built up. Like they left Rohan, now they're in a village. Like they've accumulated the rest of their army. They're like, we're out of time. We got to go. Like mount up and ride out. And then you get the payoff when they show up at the battle.
But when in Rings of Power, like time and distance,
takes 2 boats and then just full sprint. Yeah. Let's go find a battle.
There's time and distance are meaningless, and then you include a shot of people riding, and you're like, the only reason you include a shot of people riding is to establish time and distance, and you are constantly making time and distance meaningless. So this scene is meaningless and pointless and dumb, and why is this here?
It wasn't meaningless and pointless, guys. The slow-mo scene with Galadriel on the horse was the first horse we saw in the entire series, because Celebrimbor and Elrond walked to freaking Khazad-dûm on
and back
without any sort of package and stuff to eat, because they just leave.
It's just like an afternoon stroll.
Yeah, just like Sauron and Halbrand, and who totally was not Sauron. I'm so surprised. Just like he and Galadriel, when they leave to at the ending of episode 7 on their horses from the Numenorian war camp, and they also don't take anything with them because.
Well, he's also grievously wounded and should be dead. Yeah. Like there's a lot of logical errors.
Wait, so you're saying that getting stabbed in the gut and then that wound becoming instantly infected. You shouldn't be riding a horse for 6 days after that? Interesting.
He looked like he was on his deathbed.
Can't confirm that.
And then he just walks out and they're just like, my king. And then he gets on a horse, like he's fine. And then they ride for like a week at like a full sprint. Like, let alone
without rest, she
ignore
said.
all
without
logic
rest.
Involved in the horse's like endurance in that moment. But he just full sprints and he shows up and he's like half laying off the horse, like he's dead. Like, and then he's fine. But it's like none of that makes any sense. Like, unless it's just he's Sauron, so he just survived.
Yeah.
Like,
in which case, I was waiting for the elven healers to be like, he's healed already.
He's fine. Like,
we have questions.
Is he Wolverine? Which also, like, even before that, so just like we understand what the payoff ended up being, but the logic, like, what was the plan? This dude was in the middle of the ocean on a raft.
It's funny you say
was
that
he
because
just banking on Galadriel diving off of her ship and finding him? Like,
I think by the time
drowned?
I think by the time this is going up, my video will be up already. But yesterday I recorded and edited a video that's about like a guide to being Sauron based on the plan that was set forth in Rings of Power.
Plot convenience.
So,
just
if you want to know what his plan was.
Like, none of that makes any sense. Like, so like there was a way that you could have built this up and put a bunch of obvious hints that, like, going back and rewatching, you'd be like, oh, like, I understand what's going on. But literally, there was a sea monster. You were on a random broken piece of a ship. Like, did you crash the ship hoping that Galadriel would then abandon her mission and swim across the ocean all the way back to Middle Earth and find you and then be convinced to take, like, none of this? No.
Look,
like,
Alex, just because you are not capable of the kind of 4D chess. The 4D chess that Sauron does, that's just like beyond your level. So
there was so much going on, man. So much, just beyond my capacity to think of it. Man.
So how did those pop star witches fit into the grand plan of Sauron?
They were also useless.
They were red herrings.
The entire Harfoot storyline was completely useless. Just like all the new characters they created. I mean, they've told everybody, like, okay, let's make a diverse Tolkien show and create all of these new, exciting characters. And none of them is even in the final episode. That is,
I know, that's such a joke, right?
I couldn't believe how like half the cast wasn't even in the final episode. I was like, so are they? What happened to those people? What were they doing? We're just gonna have to wait till season 2.
It doesn't matter because we need more Harfoots and we need I Am Groot and we need the silent witches deciding to finally talk and then being total morons and just getting killed. Like what the whole plot, like if you really needed to include Harfoots and you wanted to sell hobbits to the audience, bring them in toward the end of the season as the finale is happening. It's like, oh, now we're being introduced to another, like going into season 2, instead of just them walking off into the distance after spending an entire season of basically pointless traveling. That
they should have just had no Harfoot scenes, and then as the Numenorians have made land and now are charging towards the Southlands, as they ride by, they're like, "Who's are those little people over there?" And they're like, "Ah!" And that's the only Harfoots.
You just see a random caravan of Harfoots.
Like, who was that?
Man, I don't know. There's so many choices. I feel like they tried to do way too many different things, and then half of it didn't even pan out. Like, I still don't understand why Adar let Arondir go. I don't understand what happened with like half the Southlands plot.
But also, how
line
dare
like,
you criticize Adar, because he's the only character that we like.
I mean, he's kind of cool, but
he really is.
He's the only one that has a compelling arc.
But then he's not even in it. Like once they write Mordor in the sky,
mission accomplished.
He doesn't show up again. Like
he
now
did
he's just on the show.
He did what he set out to do.
I don't know. There's so many just odd choices with how the show was directed and written that it's baffling to think about. And I don't care that people like the show, but when people like praise the show for being like one of the greatest like written shows on television, and this is exactly what like Tolkien would have wanted, and I'm just like, what are you talking about?
Better than the movie.
I don't know. There's just a lot of dumb stuff. Like I understand we're nitpicking, kind of. I guess no, just I'm not even nitpicking. Why is there a laughably complicated keystone that you have to create like a Morgul blade to insert it into this, and then it breaks a dam that like why is that a thing? Who again, who put that there to be like, I really hope one day that we invade this place and some guy turns to our side and then inserts it, which hilarious scene before that though, when Arondir was like, I've seen that before. It's right here. I was like, what is this? Stop. Like, no, you could have like walked up to the side of a mountain and been like, and shown some kind of like, I don't know, monument or like something to Sauron and be like, this is where I've seen this before. It's like, nope, it's literally just a wall right here in this town. It's right there. Oh, by the way, there's a weird hole that you could stick a sword in, and it's just like this booby trap. Like, none of this made sense. I don't know if it's as dumb as that entire tower being held up by a single rope that he shot, and it just immediately disintegrated and the entire thing came down. Like, which one like, is more dumb?
What you just said about like, why is this here? Who put that there? Why was it there before? Like, what was the plan?
So that the plot could happen.
But I mean, so like before, like I think it was probably Bookborn that said, you know, that these characters, they feel like they didn't exist before they came into this scene. And that's like when they started existing. But so the same can be said for everything, like the infrastructure, the plot, the objects, this dam, like all of that, like it didn't exist before. There was no reason for it to exist before in this world. It exists in this scene for this scene. The characters exist in this scene for this scene. Nothing has a history or a purpose or a thing it was doing before the show started happening.
But again, so like if that was the ultimate plan, so the Adar's entire plan was to have orcs that are allergic to the sun dig tunnels throughout all of the Southlands so that when they find this Keyblade, they can flood the volcano to cataclysm the entire land and lay waste to everything and then call it Mordor.
It's like, real lucky he studied geology.
Right? Yeah. That's just I mean, I couldn't have thought of that, but that's a very bold strategy, I guess. And
the entire
didn't work out.
Southlands storyline. I mean, they call it the Southlands. They can't even think of a freaking name for the thing, and so they call it the Southlands.
Well, one of my favorite things about that, the fact that they do the title card, right, where we have to rename the Southlands to Mordor. But like the fact that
it's your audience.
But the
Real dumb.
specifics of like how when they're like, he's the king of the Southlands or whatever, or Lord of the South, I don't know what he say, but they say the Southlands. And he's like, no, that's the name of a place that doesn't exist anymore. It needs a new name. I'm like, it's literally a descriptor for its location. There is no reason you can't continue to call these. It's not like the name of a culture or a people. It's just like the lands in the South, they remain in the South. They can still be the Southlands.
But also, Halbrand was supposed to be king of the Southlands of what?
That one village and the tower.
We saw one village.
The village and the tower.
And
the one like sentry tower that the elves left. And then they all got imprisoned.
Oh, there was a neighboring town that got decimated by orcs. That's how they found out orcs were a thing. So we're down to one village, but
again,
there were two.
We only saw the one because so that's part of the issue of like they should have just done like 1 or 2 plot lines because they have 4 or 5 seasons. Like I don't know what their ultimate payoff is unless they're gonna do the dumb thing of like leading directly into like the beginning of Fellowship, like where like Rogue One had to like end it with like, hey, there's Darth Vader. Here's like literally spelling out like this is the beginning. They're probably going to do that, but it's like you didn't need to do everything simultaneously. You could have done like 1 to maybe even 3 plot threads throughout the season.
Actually, but Game of Thrones did that. They had multiple different plot lines at the same time, and everyone said that was great. So you just hate Rings of Power just because you're a hypocrite.
I do. The good thing about Game of Thrones is it's coherent, it's well written. All the characters are interesting,
4 seasons.
And they're mostly all going toward a single goal. This, I was 5 episodes in, and I was like, what even is the plot?
There isn't one.
Like the Harfoots are traveling. Okay, there's a random stranger that doesn't speak and has magical powers, and there's 3 hooded characters that also don't speak that are following them. What is that leading to? We don't know yet. You have Elrond and the dwarves, which the dwarves are cool. I love dwarves. I think they're well done in the show.
They're the best part.
They're digging for Mithril. They even kind of fumbled that a little bit, and the whole Balrog thing was real dumb. But like the dwarves are cool. That plot line was a little like these great elven blacksmiths don't know to mix metals. Like it's a little dumb. But then like you have Arondir, like you have this cool elf character. He likes the humans. But like the whole Southland saying is like, why would I forget his girlfriend's name? Like, why did she become in charge? Why did half the things happen? Like, there were just so many logical inconsistencies there.
Well, there was a channel, and I wish I could remember who, so I could like give them credit right now. It was a video my brother showed me. What?
Bronwyn? Was that her name?
Yeah, Bronwyn.
Yeah, the character. But there was, like I said, a video that I saw. I wish I could tell you the name of the channel, but they were talking about a lot of things. But the thing that stuck out to me was about how, this bad writing and inconsistency and not thinking things through, about how the elf, like this simple change that like, so Arondir is the character that is the most like kind of interested in humans, wants to be around humans. And all the elves in this show, like elves, our understanding of Tolkien-esque elves are that they're kind of like aloof and removed and serene and kind of unemotional. But every elf in this show is really human-like and really emotional, except Arondir, who is very stoic and unemotional. Yeah. And he's the one that should be irregularly emotional and like unusually so, because he wants to be like the humans. And the other elves should be the like stoic non-human ones. And they did it the other way around, which just like makes your story less compelling.
Also, Arondir has been stationed in the Southlands for like 80 years. And now he's in love with Bronwyn, and he has been there doing his tour of that village, assumingly all that time. So he got to know her when she was born, and now they are in a relationship, which doesn't seem really okay. But nobody ever thought about questioning that, I guess, in the writing team. Whatever.
What is age, Klaus?
Yeah.
Are you suggesting there was grooming going on in the world of Tolkien?
Apparently.
But also, you have this entire military establishment there. None of them noticed orcs just tunneling through the entirety of the South.
And then they just pieced out. They're like, well, this seems like it's well in hand. We're just gonna...
They weren't little tunnels, and they weren't deep under the earth. They were right there. They were like, you could just fall into one and be like, they literally have an entire tunnel system throughout this entire landscape that's covered in like tarps.
Maybe this is actually
nothing.
Maybe it's a brilliant commentary on how like corporate oversight of things about how like the people
Yes.
actually sent there by the CEO, they're
They
like, well,
don't
it's not
pay
my
attention to
job
the
to check this
workers.
out.
Yeah.
It's not my paycheck. I
It was
came here to watch. That's what they're
yeah.
oh.
That's
And it's
exactly what they were
ironic that
going for.
Amazon is the one doing that.
Yeah.
Actually, I like it a lot
Oh
now.
man, that commentary is real. You know, cutting deep on that one. They were like, they don't know what's coming. This is what we're gonna do. This is all allegorical.
Well, Disney does meta self-referential comedy where they kind of rib themselves. So Amazon's doing the same.
Yeah.
So is there anything that we liked?
I was literally about to say, let's segue into like some things that we liked.
Let's fair and balanced. What did we like?
Yeah. The dwarves.
Yeah, I really love the dwarves.
Most scenes with Durin, Disa, and Elrond.
Yeah.
I like those.
Most of those scenes were all pretty great. I mean, the family dynamic between Durin and his dad, like just being a real butthead to him all the time. Like,
I feel like though when you're saying that they're really great, they're great compared to the rest of the scene. Like they aren't great because they are not great, but like they're just much better than the rest of it.
I enjoyed them. I could genuinely say that when the dwarves were on screen, I enjoyed those scenes.
I felt human feelings.
Yes. Like that was the best like family dynamic of the show was definitely the dwarven plotline. Like Elrond dealing with them, I loved it. But
loved is strong.
No, it's not as good as much of anything on better shows. But I would give my props to them. But like, I don't know. I can't take the Elf King seriously. That dude does not look like an elf to me. He looks like
I really don't like how all the elves look Roman. They all look so Roman.
I love their haircuts. Totally love it.
Arendir's got a real nice fade. I don't know. I feel like I could have liked Arondir more if the plot kind of went anywhere, but I feel like they just kind of neutered his character. They didn't give him a whole lot to do.
Except be the one stoic elf.
Sure. It's like
who must be saved by Bronwyn. Yes.
The issue is like there's so many characters that I just don't care about. Like I didn't care about Bronwyn or her bowl cut haired son. Which first of all, like okay, stepping right back into some negativity.
It was a very brief detour to positivity.
We'll come back to some nice comments.
On the main road.
The scene, okay. Do orcs act like this? The scene when he's like he either just found the hilt or he's looking for the hilt, and he's in that little like I think it was when they were looking for food, maybe him and his other guy
goes to the tavern,
and they film it like it's a horror movie where there's like an orc just like creeping behind the scenes and then literally just like jump scares and then screams and cuts him. I'm like, do orcs do this? Like why would an orc ever act like this? It's like I don't understand why that would ever happen.
I mean, I really did not like Theo, but I assume you guys have seen Men in Tights, the Mel Brooks movie.
Yes.
Remember the kid who like runs and is screaming, and then he pauses and he like talks to them, and he's like, "Okay, well, I have to go home now." And he like keeps running and screaming. The way that he screams, like the sound of that scream, is how Theo sounds when he's screaming. So the entire time when like Theo would be running or upset, I was like, he's the boy from Men in Tights running away as a joke. I just couldn't take it seriously.
Yeah, I don't know. That was just one of the first things that I was like, this is very weird and doesn't make any sense to me. Very strange. But
yeah, especially because it's daytime and orcs are vampires now. So
orcs are vampires now.
How did he get to the tavern? Is he like hiding there?
He was napping during the day, waiting for nightfall.
In the tavern.
Well, so that's another thing is like, again, like changes should be impactful and kind of matter. Like, isn't it just orcs are weaker in the sun? Like it weakens them slightly. Like why even make the change to be like, no, they literally can't go out in sunlight.
Except for what they do, even in this show.
They hiss and they act like vampires. Like that didn't need to happen. It was
that had to happen so that they could escape and stand right in front of the woods and not be shot by them, even though they were shooting arrows at them all the time. But
well, their arrows would also burn in the sun because they're orc arrows.
I was gonna say if they shot the arrows at him, it would just go into slow motion again, and he would just catch them and shoot them back.
And if any of them got shot, he has those seeds, so he could just heal them immediately as well.
Even when Bronwyn gets shot by 2 arrows and he just removes 1. So
another grievously wounded main character that miraculously heals like she's Wolverine
yes.
and is fine.
At least we got some magic seeds as an explanation for like
Oh,
elven healing magic. But also Arendir, I'm pretty sure, told her that elves don't have healers because they don't need them. And then Galadriel's like, we must get Halbrand to elven healers. Like, Arendir was in the room. He should have been like,
So I'm
excuse
pretty
me,
sure
since when do we have healers? I am not aware of this.
that scene existed so that Galadriel could literally just quote the Fellowship of the Ring and say he needs
Yes.
elvish medicine, and then get on a horse and take him to the elves.
I
Like,
really wish that she had like grabbed him on her horse the way Arwen grabs Frodo and just bounced along with him in front of her.
it was, I don't know. Another thing I liked that we mentioned was Adar's cool. He seemed compelling, and then
He still is
kinda
the
just-
most compelling.
but then again, it's like they started making him interesting. He seemed sympathetic, like Mercy killing the orc. He seemed very much emotional about like saving his orcs. I'm like, oh, like, is this going to be the bad guy that is, you know, like you kind of feel for him and you understand his plight? And then he's just like, hey, old man, murder this child to show that you're loyal to me.
Well, the writers were like, I think people are going to start to like Adar more than our main characters. We better make him do something heinous so that they stop that and start rooting again for.
They
the
should
main
have just made
characters.
Galadriel likable then.
That's not an
like,
option though.
Shocking that they made the main character the most unlikable person on the entire show. Like irrational, way too emotional, but also like not emotional at all when she should be, and it's just like,
Yeah.
just
How dare you.
blank stare at everything.
Well, I
And
saw
then-
somewhere or heard someone say this, and I was like, that's the only thing that makes sense because of how like flip-floppy, like the character would say one thing in one scene and the next scene they do the thing they said was bad, and like they would keep reversing itself. And they were like, so the script was written where somebody would write a scene, fold it over, hand it over to the next person, and then they wouldn't look at it. They would just write the next scene, fold it over, hand it over. I think that's how the script was written. That's the only thing that makes sense.
So it's like the Star Wars trilogy that we just got, where they were just like, hey, let's just have different directors with no actual plot developed. You just do your thing. Don't worry about what happened in the previous movie. Just
But here they did it for each scene. Don't worry what happened in the previous scene. Just
it
do
really
your
is
thing.
like there's so many disjointed scenes that they don't flow together. They don't make sense, and characters' motivations and emotions change wildly from scene to scene for basically no reason. Except for like some of the characters. I don't know how many writers there were. I think Kyle pointed out that there were like 14 directors or 14 producers
not
credited
directors,
in the openings, like too much. But like Elrond feels like he was generally well written and like they cared about his character. Same with Durin and like the entire Dwarven plotline. I feel like whoever was writing them actually tried. And then half the scenes with Galadriel or the Harfoots, I'm just like, why is any of this even happening? It doesn't feel like the same writers even wrote the entire show. Like it almost does feel like that, where it was scene by scene of just like, hey, somebody else write this one. It's weird. There's no like single thing that I can point to that was like a feeling or a vibe or like a theme throughout the show that felt consistent.
How did you miss it? It's hope.
And hope is meager.
God.
Hope is never mere.
One of the best things to come out of the show was a random guy on Reddit on the Lord of the Rings memes subreddit that was just like, I'm up for the task. And he was saying, give me any like prompt or question, and I'm going to write a response as if I was the writers on the show. And it was the greatest thread ever because he sounded like an AI writing a script. And that's exactly how the dialogue of the show comes off. It was great.
Because when I was taking notes while watching the show, like I actually would laugh a lot because like if I was just casually watching it, I wouldn't have watched it because it's not entertaining.
Yeah.
But because I was watching it for the purpose of making videos, I was actually laughing a ton because I would actually zero in, focus on, okay, so what are they saying? Is that something that I should like note down? Like what is going on in the scene? And I'd be like, wait a second, what did they just say? Wait, what?
Mm-hmm.
No, okay, write that down. That doesn't make any sense. What is that supposed to mean? That's nonsense. What is that? Yeah, it doesn't bear scrutiny.
Yeah, the Tempest is in me, whatever. So we haven't talked about the Numenor storyline yet.
Yeah, how do you feel about Numenor, Klaus? Was it a great adaptation of the Numenorians?
I actually like the look of the city.
Mhm.
So that is the thing I'm going to praise here before moving on with my rant. The entire set of characters, I also just you have Farazon, who is obviously going to be the evil
Mhm.
old wild man who's going to take away the crown from Muriel next
I mean, look at his
episode.
eyebrows. You knew he was evil right away.
Oh yeah, definitely. And then you have his son, who doesn't look anything like him.
Who was
Then you
in
have
like
these,
3 scenes.
yeah,
Very important character.
just like Earian or Elendil's daughter,
The
who
only
is
reason
there's
I know her name is from people writing comments like about her, and I literally am like, who is that?
Yeah.
I forgot her
Don't know who
name,
that is.
and then
I don't
she
think I
showed
ever
up
knew
later.
it.
But those 2 characters, before you continue, gave us one of the funnier scenes when he was like, "My father doesn't hear me when I talk," and she's like, "Then speak louder."
louder. Yeah,
I was like, "You
that's what I
dummy."
was getting at. It's just incredible.
10 out of 10 writing. Carry on, please.
Yeah, there's just no subtlety about anything about it.
No,
None at all. It's they're
like Jay
discussing
Kristoff.
their plans in the middle of some tavern in the town, and he's there shaking hands with people because that is what statesmanship looks like. You just
Mhm.
don't do any governing thing. You just walk around the market and shake
Hey,
people's
but
hands.
I was just thinking, I wonder if wait, what's her name again? Isildur's sister?
Earian.
Arian. You know how Elendil, if you try to ask him something, he just like starts talking poetically about something unrelated. I wonder if that's why she's like, when someone starts talking at her in metaphor, she's like, I don't know what you're saying. I'm going to take it literally. I'm going to zero in on what you're saying because she's dealing with that at home, and she's just like, I don't know, but speak louder, okay?
Yeah.
I can't deal with this.
Yeah, so I sort of liked the look of these Numenor sets, but the entire everything else is just so incredibly stupid. And also, why do they hate elves now? Nobody knows. Nobody ever talked about.
I think it's because the sea told them, and the sea
Because the
Oh,
C's
yeah.
always right.
is always
Except
right.
when it kills your wife.
Oh, it's still right then.
But see, again,
It's still right.
so that's one of the issues, right? So like if you don't know that they're supposed to turn, like they didn't explain at all why they hated elves or that they were so terrified of the one elf in their entire city, or that it was Galadriel, because everyone would know who Galadriel is. Like there were a lot of things that just didn't make sense. But like to a general audience that doesn't know why Numenor like ends up disliking elves or is like kind of siding with the dark side because they're being manipulated. Like none of that was evident in the show. So again, going back to like when the big reveal happens, none of it was set up because you could have had a bunch of scenes, and I've seen other people talk about this. Like you could have had a bunch of scenes of like watch people being manipulated, of like turning against the elves like for a reason, or like wanting to side with Sauron. There could have been set up for that, but again, they're trying to do 18 different plot threads that weren't going anywhere, and then the finale was just like, hey, rings of power. Like we did the thing.
Oh no, there's rings in the title. Guys, we forgot rings.
Right?
Oh no. Quick,
Like
make some rings.
like they'd had that big buildup of like, we need to build a forge, and then it was built and not talked about for 4 episodes, and then it was just like, hey, look, it doesn't work. Like we can't build rings, we suck at this. And he was like, have you tried another metal?
But like what you just said about, like setting up, slow, showing people being manipulated, etc. There's so many things about this show where like not some of the things even there's no saving it. It's a dumb idea. But there's so many things that like as the very generalist concept of an idea, you're like, that could be compelling. So like the idea of like completely broad strokes being like, what if we see someone who ends up is who Sauron is, but like you don't know it, and so like because he's supposed to be this master manipulator, then it would be get the audience the experience of like, I was taken in by him. He really is a master manipulator.
Yep.
Because I didn't realize that was him. I found him very compelling. So like a good writer could make like an amazing show where that's like the arc that happens and you are completely taken in by it. And that's like clearly like kind of the idea that they had with that is like what they wanted to do, and then so utterly failed to have any idea of how to accomplish that.
They just skipped all the stuff in between that leads you to believe like can't, like, yes, there were theories immediately like, oh, I bet he's gonna be Sauron, but that's not coming from like random people. That's probably coming from book readers, and there's no like evidence in the show to really make that a convincing narrative that they could have done, but they just kind of did it.
Well, it's also not a
And
situation where like if I'm so excited now that I know that he is him to go back and rewatch from the beginning and catch all the times that I missed it, that like I didn't see it where he was actually manipulating the situation all along, because he didn't, he never did anything to manipulate anyone.
it's season 8 Danny crap where they're just like, see, remember 4 seasons ago when she burned 2 people that refused to bend the knee? Like, oh, she's crazy. Like that. No, that's not the same. It's just not. Like, you could have set it up better. Like, that's.
I mean, it's like the same problem that really, really badly written thrillers have, where they just like lie to the reader, and then the big twist reveal, you're like, yeah, well, I didn't see it coming.
Yeah,
because that wasn't set up.
It's like you could set up a Deus Ex Machina. Like, you could set up like Rohan, showing up to Minas Tirith at the last second and saving the day. Like, you could set that up because it was set up. But if you're just in the middle of a fight and all of a sudden, out of literally nowhere, like Sebastian de Castell and like Trader's Blade, it's just like, hey, look, there's an army here. Like, what? Like, you can't just do that. That was never set up. So when you're just like, hey, here's the twist, she read it in a book. Like, none of that was set up before. And then you like, as soon as you think about it at all, like, so what was your plan, bro? Like, none of this is all like coincidence and convenience that you got to this place. Like, none of this would have been a plan at all.
Well, it's also so like it's only if someone knows who Sauron ends up being later that they're like, he's evil, because in the show he hasn't done anything evil, he hasn't done anything manipulative. And when he says, hey, Galadriel,
in the street once.
But when he says, hey, Galadriel, like, let the past die. I admit I did bad things. And when she's like, you'll be a dark lord, she's like, no, not dark. I want to be good. I think we can be good together and we can heal what we messed up. And you're just like, how evil are you to be like, no, you were evil, you stay evil. Good day, sir. So like, the only reason you would think that's compelling is you're like, well, I know it's like killing baby Hitler, where you're like, well, I know he's gonna be Hitler. So he hasn't been Hitler yet, but
because she wants to genocide orcs. Because she's actually the evil one. Dumb writing.
Because they really could have shown that too, like this. So they pretty much open with Galadriel just being like, I mean, I guess they did the quick prologue of like Sauron did evil things, she lost her brother, but like we don't really get a sense for evilness of Sauron or why we need to fear that. When she's going around saying Sauron is an imminent threat, we need to go after it, you really feel like, lady, what's he doing? Like, why do we need to care about this? Like, it doesn't seem like an imminent threat to me, and we haven't really seen that he is. So it's just like, yeah.
But if you just say it, it makes it true.
Well, and that's where, like, again, like I said in the beginning, and like what you where like this is a show where like it relies on you knowing Tolkien to make any kind of sense. But if you know Tolkien, you'll also be like, this makes no sense because I know Tolkien. So like the Mithril reveal, when he's like, what do you call this new ore? And then he's like, oh, we call it shiny stuff. And then he's like, no, in your language it would be. And he's like, and it's a slow zoom and it's this epic moment of like Mithril. And you're like, if you don't know Tolkien, you're like, okay,
like, what?
They call it.
And if
Mithril.
you do, you're like, they've known about Mithril for thousands of years. Like, why is this a reveal? This doesn't make sense. It also doesn't heal elves. Like,
but you also don't know why the word Mithril should mean anything to you. If you don't know Tolkien, you're just like, why are we pausing so long on the name of this rock? I don't understand what's happening.
Because hack writers will put that in there and be like, these guys watched Fellowship. They know what Mithril is. So when we say it, they're going to be like, oh, snap.
But if they watched Fellowship, they're also going to say a lot of this also doesn't really check out with what I remember being true in this world.
But you'll remember the word Mithril. That's all you need. Or you'll remember it, like, again, because they don't care about anything that's in the books. Like, the stranger is definitely going to be Gandalf, right? Like, that's...
Oh, is that really? What you think?
Right. Like, wow. Because, of course... But they had to do the thing of like, he says like, follow your nose.
Follow your nose.
Which to me, I just started laughing because I'm thinking of like Fruit Loops commercials and Toucan Sam being like, follow your nose. But it's like immediately, because I went to Reddit and they were like, oh my God, he said this. Remember when Gandalf said that? And I was like, stop. This is dumb. Like, it can't and shouldn't be Gandalf, but it's going to be because people know who Gandalf is.
But they didn't
Like-
say it was, so the writers can always be like, no, it would be dumb if it was Gandalf. Gotcha, it's not actually Gandalf.
Speaking of dumb writing, the Harfoots. This is one of many instances that I hated. Why did Nori always do the dumbest thing possible
Why did
in
Nori?
every scene? Like, the Harfoots are dumb. Like, not only are they terrible people that abandon their brothers and sisters and families to die because they're slowing them down on their endless caravan travels.
I mean, they live by the pirates code. He who falls
really
behind
do.
gets left behind.
But like, homie, not Gandalf, blows up a tree and they're all just standing under it. Like, that was dumb. Nori sees him like turning water into ice and grabs him. Why would you do that? And then she runs away like, how dare you? He's casting magic and you're just like, stop. No, stop being dumb. I don't understand. And then you had like the comical, like them hiding from wargs or whatever they were hiding from in the woods when they're all together. And then he just does his little like hand slam on the ground, which just,
I mean, that's
became
where they
his
were
thing.
revealing that he could do Wait, no, I think they revealed that before.
They already revealed it.
Yeah, I don't know if that was for
Like
then.
the first scene he was in when he starts screaming and like fire's going everywhere.
I mean, again, I saw someone say that every episode felt like an extended teaser trailer because it did. Every episode was like teasing something for an hour, and then it was teasing something in the next episode, and then teasing the same thing again in the third. And you're just like, you can't keep teasing this. I don't care at this point. You need to pay this off,
That's why,
or just forget about it.
Like, you can't get. I was episode 4? So I was 4 hours into the show, and I was still just like, what is the plot? Like, a lot of things are happening, kind of like different like plots are going, different scenes are happening, but what is any of it leading to other than I know this is leading up to them making rings,
but it wasn't all leading to that. The rings thing just kind of happened.
You know, the show is going there because it's called Rings of Power. Like, eventually they got to go there.
But it wasn't even like a slow roundabout way to getting to rings. Like, most of it had nothing to do with rings.
No, because they did this. They were like, here's our 10 plots. And then they were like, wait, it's called Ring of Power. Ring of Power. Like, they were just like, oh yeah, we got to do that thing.
But it legit looks like they forgot about the rings until the last day of shooting. And they're like, shoot, okay, here's $50. Can you go to the dollar store, get some rings, and then we're going to shoot a scene and we're going to make some rings. And that's the end of the show.
The writer's room was like, what about Bronwyn? She doesn't matter. Arendir doesn't matter. The dwarves doesn't matter. Elrond doesn't matter. Just Halbrand, Galadriel. Make some rings. It's like, what about everything else that you made us care about for 9 hours? Like, we were supposed to.
Made us care about. Whoa.
Supposed to care about.
Make us care
Sorry.
About.
And then the Harfoots got like a 15-minute goodbye, which took up a third of the episode. I was just like, why is this still happening? Not Gandalf.
It's very emotional.
It was very emotional. Grey Havens once again,
like,
Alex. You just didn't realize it. It was as emotional as the ending of Return of the King.
So it was hilarious.
I mean, we spent about as much time with these characters as you would watching the theatrical releases of all 3 Lord of the Rings movies. And I just feel like
they all suck. I hate them all.
I mean,
but what was
really
hilarious
sad.
though is during that entire goodbye scene, like if you look in the background, not Gandalf, it's just like he's just standing here like, are you done? He's just like he's just
also the people in the background
off in the background, like under a tree.
Well, like we said, characters have nothing going on outside of a scene they're in, and they just accidentally had him still in the shot because he doesn't have an existence.
It's just like they're NPCs. They're just NPCs in the video game.
You look away and they're just standing there. Oh man.
And if you look at the Harfoots, like the crowd of Harfoots saying goodbye to Nori, half of them are like waving and everybody is staring different directions. Just like, why?
Also, just like in that scene, like it was like 2 seconds of time between Nori talking to not Gandalf and being like, I've had enough adventure for a lifetime. And then her parents being like, well, off you go to adventure. And she's like, hooray. And you're like, what? Didn't you just say you'd had a what?
So proving your theory again, where they wrote the first scene and then said, here, write the next scene. What happened in the last scene? Don't worry about it. Just write the next one.
It was like not even really even the next scene, though. It was the same scene. Oh my god.
I don't know. The music was kind of nice for most.
Except I was mad at the music because they kept doing these big emotional swells. And I was like, but I feel nothing right now. Why are you swelling?
I don't know. I think
The only
some of the
time-
soundtrack was pretty good. Some of the visuals were good. Certain plot threads that they should have spent more time on were good that they abandoned entirely. I didn't need the Harfoots at all in this, but I'm pretty sure they were shoehorned in because hobbits. I don't feel like you should have built up Bronwyn and Arondir for 6 episodes and then just like drop them out of the show. Same with Adar once Mordor was written in the sky. What other characters are there? Like, I feel like Elendil became annoying toward the end because when what's her name was like,
Arian.
she was like, I don't want anyone to know that I'm blind.
Which, like, why is she
Fetch me
wearing
a
a
red
blindfold?
Fetch me the reddest cloth on this set.
It was the
So I
most
can-
Bird Box thing I've ever seen.
What? And then I don't know. There's like bad direct. Like Elendil was like a pretty good actor. I feel like he like felt like a believable character up until the scene when he cried when she.
Even then, though, it was like a lot of he was, as you say, like a charismatic actor. So he would
Yeah.
say these lines, and I'd be like, "That sounds epic," and then I'd be like, "Take 2
And then you'd
seconds to
listen
write
to
it
the
down." You're like,
words.
"Wait." That made no like good job, actor, for making that sound like a thing, but that's not a thing. What did you just say? That was nonsense.
Where is my son? Oh, didn't Theoden say that? Such a coincidence.
What happened to Isildur? Like,
He's definitely
I'm
dead.
sure
We're
he's
never
dead.
gonna see
He's
him.
definitely dead.
I
He's not
mean,
gonna-
absolutely, he's gonna be dead. But
And they used the freaking horse to save him because that's what happened in Two Towers.
Aragorn?
Wow. So
heavy
clever.
stuff.
No, they set the horse free, Klaus. Were you not paying attention? We're never gonna see the horse or Isildur again.
Oh, I didn't realize. I'm sorry. That's because I'm dumb.
You're just mixing it up
Oh.
with Two Towers. That's all.
Elendil calmed the horse down just like Aragorn calmed the horse down.
Oh, maybe the horse will
Yeah.
rescue Elendil. It'll swim to Numenor and at some point rescue
might.
Elendil.
And it'll meet Sauron on a raft in
Can
the
we
middle of the
talk
ocean.
about? Okay, I only realized that this had happened when I went back to rewatch it to do my video. But the first time I watched the episode that's after the Mordor happening, I was like, wait, at what point did Muriel become blind? Because at the beginning of the episode, she was like helping people and could clearly see. And now she's blind. And I was like, she looks fine. Did looking at the lava make her blind? And then like when I rewatched, it's like, oh, I guess some sparks fell in her eyes. But she looks like there's no wounding, there's no scarring, like there's nothing. Like I was like, why are you blind?
Why is no one else blind? They walked into a
Because no one
complete
else dead.
erupting volcano.
I was
Galadriel,
like, erupting
Galadriel
volcano.
walked into a cataclysm. Like,
Erupting volcano is nothing compared to sparks falling in eyes.
like
It's way worse.
when that episode ended with Mordor being created and like the entire volcano erupting, and Galadriel's just like nonchalantly walking directly into it. And then everyone is fine. Like no one has any problems except for whoever died, apparently.
Well, Halbrand got stabbed by the pyroclastic flow.
Oh, yeah.
So that's unfortunate.
But he was fine. It doesn't matter because of his healing powers because he's Wolverine.
Yeah.
But like there was no fallout from that for anybody involved except for characters you don't care about. Like who was the dude that died and they zoomed in on his face? I was like, who is this person?
Isildur's
was,
best friend, come on.
Isildur's best friend, yeah.
The one who didn't want to fight anymore.
He was
Well,
in.
now
like,
he won't
2
fight
scenes.
anymore.
Why would I care? They zoomed in on his face and Isildur was all sad, and I was like, I literally said out loud, "Who is this?" I forgot who it was because I didn't care. And that was the casualty from the exploding volcano.
And
That-
Isildur.
Isildur. And Isildur. Rest in peace, brother.
I also don't understand why Galadriel didn't help anyone except Theo. There's all these like people. Like Isildur, to his credit, was going and trying to help people. Muriel was going to try and help people. Galadriel's like, "You child,
Because
you
she's
be
the
my
worst.
squire now, and we will now march on out of here. Have my sword because well
Because
done."
she
She didn't
she's
try to
the-
help anyone.
Why would she? She's Galadriel. She's just a badass. That's all she's
They
there
were
for.
also all like right next to her when the lava hit, and then the lava's gone, and suddenly everyone is teleported
Everyone's
to the
scattered.
camp that they had time to make at the top of it. Who made that camp? When did they make that camp? They were all. Where did those supplies come from? That charging army did not have wagons with it. What is this camp? They just suddenly have at the top of the hill.
Suspend your
But-
disbelief.
They brought the camp. You just didn't see it. It was in the boat.
Oh.
Yeah,
Maybe
there
they
was a lot
use.
of stuff
Oh,
on that boat.
it's like in Harry Potter, you know, when they have those like little portable like tents that are
Mhm.
actually like bigger on the inside.
Exactly.
Okay,
They're
got
wizards.
it. Got it. Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
That's
sense.
all it was.
That
You
makes
think those helmets were just cool looking? No, they were pop-up tents.
This makes so much more sense.
Just flap it out, stand it up. While they were setting up the camp is when she went blind because it took forever.
But I really wish they hadn't cut the scene where they like got a radio distress signal from the Southlands to be like, "Hey, can you charge in here as soon as possible because we kind of have a battle happening." You know,
No, I
it would
believe
have
that.
connected those scenes a little better.
All you have to do is sail from Numenor, land, and
And
just
then
blow up.
charge.
Just, who cares? You're gonna find that one.
Someone's
fight
in trouble somewhere.
You're gonna find the single battle that's happening in all the Southlands.
Well, there's
You're
only
gonna go
one
straight
town
to
in
it.
all of the Southlands, so just head there.
Literally the only thing happening. It's all they got going for them.
Yeah, and you have to
they're gonna
send
go right
exactly
there.
300 volunteers as your army for the battle of the shitty village next to.
Which again,
The
so they
tower.
they easily won the fight, but like when you see after they collapsed the tower that was very structurally compromised, you see like what seems to be thousands of orcs, and then like 45 horses come in and they slaughter everybody. But then Adar still has an army because they just like. So what is this like the Dothraki all over again? Like
Yes.
we just witnessed the end of the Dothraki. Oh wait, they're in the next episode.
Yeah.
Just scratch that. Doesn't matter. Like I don't know. There's scene to scene they just don't make sense. There's so many things wrong with the way that it was written. And I get it. You can just suspend your disbelief to an extent with a lot of this and not nitpick it. But as soon as you apply logic to like any of this, it all
But the
collapses.
thing is, usually like for like a plot hole, it's usually like, okay, but everything surrounding it is fine, and you're just like picking on this one hole.
Sure.
But when the whole thing is composed of holes, then it is no longer structurally sound, and there's nothing
Like
else
the
to
tower.
focus on.
It's a metaphor.
Yeah.
So what was your favorite episode?
Seven
So
or
hard to
eight.
choose.
Which one?
8. The final
Which
one,
one was
definitely
8?
my favorite. When they make all the rings of power. I mean, oh no. Didn't they forget to make the rings for the humans and the dwarves?
But they
That's
sang the
crazy.
song, Klaus.
They sang the song.
They sang the song as the
Exactly. And that was like, but you just didn't do that thing.
They didn't do any of it in the correct order.
I think they made the other rings off screen because
Probably.
Galadriel wasn't involved in the making of those rings, so it doesn't matter.
So it doesn't matter. So no, really,
Oh,
I
that's
think my
why we
favorite
didn't get to
episode
see Durin in this last episode, because he was busy making rings. He didn't have time to shoot a scene.
Probably.
with the Balrog, yeah.
Yeah. And I bet that's what Elendil's daughter, Isildur's sister, she's probably forging some rings for men.
Why not?
Yeah.
She's got,
'Cause
she's
she's-
pretty crafty, we've seen. She can sketch
She's
and she can
incredibly
stone
gifted. She's
mason.
allowed to be alone with the king on her own.
also,
just
so-
like that.
So now by show logic though, like as silly as this all is, and we're making fun of it, based on show logic, they needed a mithril blended with whatever this other metal was to make the rings. So they've now established in this version of Middle Earth, they were the first 3 rings that were created. So then are they going to go back to Durin and be like, hey, we need a lot more of this metal, and then take it to everybody and then make all the other rings? Because they can't just say that everybody else was making rings, because how would that make sense? They don't know how to do it. They just made the first ones, according to the show.
They also clearly, I feel like rings of power are not actually, like, they would be high value items, but not like impossible to replicate items, because you just need some gold and silver and some mithril. And we saw an entire cavern full of mithril ready for the taking up off the ground.
Veins everywhere. I mean, that was quite the jackpot.
And they were able to make those. I mean, that dagger that they melted down all in one blended pot, even though we were going to separate the metals into silver and gold later, but doesn't matter. So that one dagger had a crap load of metal. So
you also didn't need to melt the dagger. You could have just melted the hilt.
No, just chuck the whole thing in.
Why did you?
We'll filter it
later.
later.
The blade. You could have kept the blade. Whatever.
It's a metaphor, Alec. Man.
So much dumb.
So much dumb.
So much dumb.
I will say, so like, okay, I haven't said a thing that I liked,
I like Halbrand as an actor. I like.
That's what I was about to say. Dang it,
Carry
Alex.
on. Carry on.
Let's say so. Like I was saying earlier about the concept of like having a charismatic character that you think is great, and then you're like, oh my god, that was Sauron. You had me there. And I think Sirens. They heard that I was praising Rings of Power, so they sent the cops after me. But I think that the actor cast as Halbrand could pull off a role like that, where he's like being charismatic, and then later when you rewatch it, you're like, oh, he was subtly manipulating people, and I didn't notice it. Like that actor could totally do that. But not with this. He was doing the best he could with this dumb script, because he had some of the most compelling scenes where like I felt like he was a character that existed before the scene, like that he's got something else going on, and you didn't know what it was, but like that he was a good actor, and I wish for better for him.
The script was just so bad. Like I feel like they barely gave Arondir anything to do, so he wasn't a compelling character. They like even Galadriel, like I have to, I don't know this actress, but I have to believe she's a better actress than half the scenes that she's in this.
I have seen her in something else before.
So am I off, or is she like not
the
worst thing
she
ever?
Wasn't the main character in it, but I remember liking her in the thing that I saw her in. So
I feel like with better direction and a better script, she could have been
it's mostly
better, more likable character. Like,
tell me Cate Blanchett with that script would be a compelling character. God. Like, what are you supposed to do with that script?
because again, though, it's like they did the dumb thing where it's like they didn't give her a compelling narrative or good dialogue or scenes, but they did the thing where Sauron says the moment like she could be his queen. And then all the dum-dums are like, remember in the Fellowship when she was like, I would be a queen. Like, they did the thing. Like, the member berries shit needs to stop, because you could have just had a good script and shown her.
Well, I really didn't think that they would like reveal him to be Sauron at the end of the season, because I thought they were really going to stretch out like a growing, blossoming affection between them, because we had barely begun to possibly maybe kind of sense that there might later on be a little smidge of chemistry between them. But no, we've already gone past that, where he's apparently already is like, be my queen. And you're like, wait, what? Like, it was like yesterday that you were like in the cell next to her and being like, don't be such a, you know, like when did you be like, you're the one that will set me on the path to rightness. You must be by my side for all the time. Like,
because again, they didn't build any of it up.
Which is, again, I thought they were like starting to hit at this, because like in season 2, they were going to really hit it off, but nope.
And then she realizes this entire time she's been manipulated by the person she wants to get, like, oh, that could have been a good narrative, huh?
Yep. Because they had to reveal he was Sauron immediately.
But now the writers do say that Sauron is going to be a complexly, I believe was the term, villain, like evil character or something. They said complexly because they want him to be Walter White in Breaking Bad, so he's gonna be
like the Dark Knight.
Yeah, like what are we even doing, guys? So now he's just gonna be like, he's already at Mordor. He's gonna be evil Sauron. How at this point are you even gonna do the Walter White thing? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, he's not a person that was like down on his luck, needed money, and slowly turned into a life of crime while trying to balance being a family man. Like, that ship has sailed. You can't do that with his character.
Well, that ship sailed, and then he got then it shipwrecked, and then Galadriel found him. And then...
I think he's gonna release Celeborn and send him back to Galadriel. I mean, he's kept him in hiding for centuries, and then he's gonna show up and be like, "Oh, I'm still alive."
Or dead. He'll be, you know what he's going to do? He's going to do what Phantom of the Opera does, and he's going to put a noose around Celeborn's neck and be like, choose B or he dies. And Galadriel will be like, no, how can you do this? You deceived me. I gave you my heart blindly.
Except she didn't.
She says she did, Alex. That makes it true. Just the scene where she's like, he's like, I wanted to stay in Numenor. I didn't want to do these things. And she's like, no, you saved me on the raft. And you're like, wait, what does that have to do with what I just said? Like, that is not a counterpoint to what I just said. What are you talking about?
Yeah. Also, literally in that scene, he's like, no.
Wait, so the whole thing of happened. Like writing scenes and folding it over, sometimes writing dialogue. One writes a line, folds it over, hands it over, and it's like, next line of dialogue is non sequitur.
Guess the dialogue. I'm like, wait a second, that shouldn't go there. Whatever. We already filmed it. Can't go back.
I mean, it was a fun challenge for the actors to try to make it sound like a conversation.
How did your wife die? Oh, the ocean.
No, the sun is setting and rising, and I watched it, and she drowned.
Yeah.
Also, why did Galadriel wait until like episode 9 to mention that she was married? Why was it that late in the show that was brought up?
Why mention it at all?
For people to be like, see, they read the book.
The people being like, I thought she had a husband. She did.
Yeah.
But she misplaced him.
It's like he's very clearly not dead either.
This was like this deep moment of like bonding over shared trauma, right? Is with the scene where she shares that. But when she shares the story, like, and I called him like a silly clam or something because of his armor not fitting right. And I was like, what? So dumb. I'm sorry, I'm not feeling emotional for you right now. I'm laughing. She's like, a clam. What?
The story Tolkien never told. Because he would never write this dialogue.
Honestly, my favorite episode is whichever one. I think it was the third one. Whichever one is the one where they screamed, "The sea is always right at the sea." Like that will always be my favorite episode. There's nothing ever been funnier because that's the same episode where Galadriel's so slow-mo riding. That episode just has so much gold in it.
That scene lasted way too long. The super close up.
And that's also the episode where they do the like fake out with the giving the elves water, and then they're like, yeah, it's water, and they're like, seems like it's water, and they're like, yeah, it's water, and they're like, seems like it's water, and they're like, yeah, it's water, and like finally slice your neck, and you're like, okay, you got him.
There's a single drop of blood and she's dead. Boom.
So yeah, that's my favorite episode.
I did laugh when the one elf did get out and then just immediately got shot.
It was very emotional. Well, any thoughts that you haven't shared yet that you would like to share, or about season 2, or anything serious about how to rewrite it? Or
I'm just worried that they're going to focus even harder on the Harfoots now, because they're going to now what's going to happen is they're going to focus on Nori and that little quest. But they're also going to cut back to her family and the other Harfoots that we.
Wait, I'm sorry. Go back. When you said that little quest, a quest usually has a goal. What is the goal of that quest?
The walk that her and not Gandalf are going to go on that leads to
his memory.
I don't know. Maybe she'll put some more berries in her hair.
Maybe they'll come across a very like fertile area and be like, we should dig holes here, put doors on them, and tell all the other Harfoots about it. And well, it can't be called that because they don't have rights to that. But maybe it'll be called.
It'll be the Sherlock.
It'll be Harfoot.
God.
Yeah. Maybe they are going to find Celeborn in Rune and release him. And
when is Legolas going to come in? Because we know he's gonna reprise his role again. When is Legolas coming? He already made his presence known in The Hobbit, which didn't make sense. So let's just go all the way. Let's just have him be in this for some reason.
Maybe he'll have a romance with Galadriel, and that's when Celeborn comes back and is like, "Hey."
Oh my god!
I mean, I definitely sensed some like romantic subtext between Cate Blanchett and Orlando Bloom when those two met in Lord of the Rings. So that's definitely there's a past there. The same as there's a shared. As soon as they ask, Galadriel about Sauron, she's like,
"Yeah."
It's basically like Cloris Leachman in Young Frankenstein. He was my boyfriend.
All right, so realistically, though, so we have Mordor established. That's a thing now. So they're going to have to, I guess, start building in Mordor because now you have Halbrand there. So he has to meet up with Adar and the orcs. But again, are we going to go back
Adar
to the thing
hates Sauron.
That's what I was going to say. Like Adar said that he killed him.
I'm not sure why he thought that, but
where did that go? What did that mean?
I mean, that's sort of obvious. He kills his former body, and that is why Halbrand asks him, "Do you remember me?" And he's like, Actually, I don't.
So
Because it
again,
looks
that's
different now.
Halbrand basically took some polyjuice potion. And he's like, "Do you recognize me?" And he's like, "No." He's like, "Good. Okay, it's still in place. Okay." Whew.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I guess does that just mean Adar's gonna die next season? Like Halbrand's just gonna kill him and be like, "No, I'm
Amen.
actually in charge of the orcs now." And then the dumb old man that was chanting is gonna be like, "Oh, you're my Dark Lord, not this guy." So
But
the
I'm gonna
Southlands
keep
are
the name Mordor, and yeah.
season 2 is gonna open up. They're still gonna be chanting Adar. So I don't know. Nori's gonna be on her little walking mission with not Gandalf. I guess we're gonna have to go back to Arendir and Bronwyn and see what the hell happened there because their kings, the king of the Southlands, isn't there anymore.
I would love to see the
Guys.
follow up on them having made the 3 rings of power and then being like, "So hey Gil-galad, we totally cured that plague you were worried about." And he's like, "Oh yeah, how?" And they're like, "We've got some rings now that the 3 of us are gonna wear." And he's like, "Cool, but like that cures the plague. How?" And they're like,
Magic.
Because they're powerful.
he's like, "What happened to making a crown for me? Why do you guys now have 3 rings and I have nothing? Excuse me."
He doesn't even have his table anymore.
See, that was an actual kind of funny scene. I will give the show that. It was funny that Durin was messing with them.
Yeah,
but it's
that was
also funny that
funny.
those elves were going to carry that table
Right.
all the way back to Cousin Doom. Tra-la-la.
It'll take
Well,
like
I
a
don't
day and a
care.
half.
I don't care what they're gonna do in episode in season 2 because I'm not gonna watch another single
Don't
episode.
lie, Klaus. You know you're going to watch. You won't be able to resist.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
I
I'm
half
done.
expected them to just like go straight to the fall of Numenor when she had that vision. First of all,
Mhm.
why aren't they just totally misrepresenting what the Palantirs do? Like she's like, I have this ball. Come see it, Galadriel. She's like, I've seen this before. And then they just like share the same vision. I'm like, I don't think that's how that works, but maybe I'm dumb. But
It's broken.
I don't know. And why were all the other ones lost? Like that's not a thing. I don't know. I was confused. There was some choices.
But Isildur's sister has now discovered one, and that's important because
What is her
of
name again?
reasons.
Earian.
That one.
Earian.
Yeah,
Did somebody like random name generate her? Like
I suppose.
I don't know.
I saw actual theories from from early on, the first time you saw her, that she's secretly an elf, and that's why her hair is always covering her ears.
I thought they were going to do that with Theo, and they never did the reveal. I was expecting his little elf ears to point out and be like, see, he's a hybrid. He's a half.
He's actually Arendir's son.
Exactly. That's what I thought was going to happen and never did.
Yet. That's season 2.
He just has a really bad haircut.
I thought it was going to be the Witch King, but that didn't
There's
happen
still
either.
time. There's still time.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of the Witch King and ring wraiths, why did the 3 magicians look like ring wraiths when they died? Because people have seen that visual before? Like,
yes,
it doesn't make sense.
Also, just the fact that
Batman.
like I get that they're
realize.
Evil, but the fact that not Sauron, not Gandalf, whatever wizard man is like, I'm good, and immediately kills 3 people is like
just obliterates them from the planet.
It's like the same idea of goodness that Galadriel has when she's vowing to commit genocide. You're like, do the writers know what good means? I'm not sure that they do.
This is why I'm better than you, because I'm actually just gonna murder you and everyone that you know. Because I'm the hero of this story.
Adar's not even going out here trying to kill everyone. He's like, look, we want these lands. So like, if you leave, we'll leave you alone. We just want this thingy. If you could give us the thingy, we'll leave you alone. Just please evacuate. And they're like, no, we're going to find every single one of you and kill you. And you're like, why?
Because there's a tempest inside of her.
Oh, man.
It's telling her to murder all the orcs.
Yeah. It was,
but I guess we'll get Numenor being all like anti-elf and evil now because they have black flags everywhere when they came back.
Yeah,
and they just skipped any build up to why any of that's in place, other than they left.
It's because the king died.
Yeah,
and now the elves are coming to steal their jobs, and so they have to riot again.
Yeah.
See, no.
Even though the one elf they had is stayed behind in Middle Earth. But remember, they vowed to come back, and Galadriel promised that the elves would be ready. So I guess Galadriel's gonna rally the troops.
Yeah.
I'm sure Gil-galad will be fine with that.
Elrond's totally down. They're all just ready to go to war with whoever Galadriel sends them after. Sauron is back. I told you.
No, but she's not going to tell them about Sauron. She had an opportunity to do that. And she's like, doesn't matter. Shh, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I've been searching for Sauron for 1,000 years. I found him, but just doesn't matter.
But Elrond knows because he read the paper she left in the lake.
But he's like, instead of saying something, I'm just going to be like, let's carry on with this ring project, though. I have 0 questions or concerns.
He's like, so I found this note. This is disturbing. What are you guys making? Rings of power.
But also the note that he found is the same thing Galadriel found, which is just like a broken family tree, and is like, would he pick that up and make the same logical leap that Galadriel did? It's like, this means that they made Halbrand is Sauron. Those are the only 2 dots that need connected. Like, what?
Because Leanna, we saw Galadriel reach the conclusion, and then Elrond found the paper and did the whole like.
Which remind me again how Galadriel reached that conclusion. Anyone who says isn't who you said they are is Sauron.
Who knows? Because the plot requires it so that they could have their big reveal.
And the Southlanders were still like, are you the prince that was promised to us? Are you our king? Yay!
And really only Bronwyn asked, and everyone else was like, hey.
I mean, they're dumb peasants, whatever. I could imagine that they would be dumb enough to be like, yes. King,
on day 2 of being king, he's like, bye, and they're like, strength to the king. He's never coming back, guys. It's awkward. It's back to acting regional manager Bronwyn. All right, well, do we have any positive notes to end on, or just more negativity?
There won't be new episodes for 2 years. That is a positive note.
It is time for them to course correct.
I will say the same thing for when Wheel of Time ended. They could potentially make things better in the time that they have before them. And hopefully... That
was almost a Gandalf quote right there.
I was starting to go for it, and then I bailed on it. Hopefully they improve. But see, the thing is like, we're sitting here complaining about it. The show is getting ridiculous reviews and making a bunch of money. And apparently people love it. Just like Wheel of Time was like their most watched show that they had done. They're not going to change anything. It's going to be dumb. I don't know. Wheel of Time and Rings of Power can compete for the dumbest show on Amazon next year or 2 years from now, I guess.
Yeah. So which do you think the first season is dumber? Rings of Power or Wheel of Time? I think Rings of Power is
probably Rings of Power. Wheel of Time, I obviously like. They did a lot more, just in direct contradiction with like material that they had access to, and they just wanted to change because Rafe is a weirdo. But I don't know, like both shows were bad.
But I think Wheel of Time had a plot, and that puts it above Rings of Power
because they literally had the script. Like the books were like, here you go. And then they're like, nah, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to change that.
I'm not saying they deserve credit for that, but it did make it a better show because it had a plot.
I don't know. I kind of hate watch Wheel of Time. Rings of Power, I was mostly bored through, but it's probably better than Wheel of Time was, honestly. It's got to be. It's got to be better. Not by much, but it's got to be slightly more competent.
Did anyone say that the sea is always right in Wheel of Time?
No, but they did do a lot of dumb stuff in that show. So, like right from the jump.
True.
I don't know. It was bad.
Well, any final thoughts? I feel like we've run out of things to rant about.
Nope. I mean, I've gone for 5 hours, but
I mean, there is so when I say we've run out of things to rant about, I think we've run out of ways to be like constructive and offer like actual conversation about the show while ribbing it. But after this, it'll just be, and this thing was dumb, and also this thing was dumb, and also this thing was dumb.
Valid criticism, though. But then you turn into the YouTube comments that are just like, "This is bad." Like,
Dumb
well,
review.
You're not wrong, but
Yeah.
dumb review. In fact, reviews themselves are stupid.
Also that, as a concept, yeah. It's a good
This
thing
whole
we weren't
video is-
reviewing.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Well, hopefully the showrunners will watch this and take notes and learn what they need to
Oh, I'm
improve.
sure.
And yeah, if they can
Totally,
always call
totally.
us. We can elaborate on any of the points that we made. All right. Well, everyone's channels will be linked down below, so go check out these fine people who clearly have excellent taste.
I'm just sad, man. The show could have been good, even with no material. You could have made a better show than this.
Yeah.
Come on now.
You really could have. So on that happy note, we're just sad now. So hope everyone has a good rest of their morning, afternoon, or evening. And we'll see you in another Worldhoppers video soon.
See ya.
Bye.